Chicago in the 1920s was a city built on smoke and blood. Factories hummed, trains screamed down the tracks, and the streets pulsed with the nervous heartbeat of a nation learning just how profitable crime could be. In the back alleys, among the brick walls painted with soot and desperation, a skinny teenage boy with restless eyes began to carve his path into infamy. His name was Salvatore Sam Giancana, but the streets had already given him a different one. Mooney, short for Moon Mad. A boy whose temper snapped like a trap and whose eyes burned with something that made even grown men uneasy. He didn't start as a killer. He started as small. A lookout, a runner, a messenger for the neighborhood crews loyal to Al Capone. But even then, even in the tiny jobs, Sam moved like someone who already knew he belonged somewhere higher, somewhere darker. He didn't flinch when older boys pulled knives. He didn't tremble when policemen barked at him. There was a strange, unsettling steadiness in him, a fearlessness that didn't belong in a boy of 15. It didn't take long for the mob to notice. Capone's lieutenants needed someone young, someone quick, someone invisible to the cops, and Sam Giancana fit the mold perfectly. Before long, he was given his first real assignment, not to fight, not to kill, but to drive. At 16, he became the wheelman for the outfit's hit squads. A teenager behind the steering wheel of a getaway car, and he handled it with the cold precision of a veteran. While other boys his age practiced baseball throws, Sam practiced sharp turns in narrow alleys, memorized escape routes, and learned how to swallow panic until it dissolved into adrenaline. They'd load into his car on nights when Chicago's air felt heavy with the promise of violence. 2 or 3 men with pistols tucked under their coats, eyes narrowed and silent. Sam would drive them to their mark, drop them off, and wait. He didn't cover his ears when the gunshots cracked. He didn't pray. He didn't freeze. He simply gripped the wheel tighter and listened to the echoes fade, counting the seconds until the men sprinted back to the car. Then Sam, still a boy, would slam the gas pedal and vanish into Chicago's maze of streets as if he had memorized every stone, every turn, every shadow. Some nights, the killers returned with blood on their coats. Some nights, they didn't return at all. But Sam always did. And that alone was enough for Capone's men to begin trusting him with more. Sam's talent wasn't just driving. It was his mind, razor-sharp, calculating, hungry. He learned things quickly. The rules of the street, the hierarchy of the mob, the delicate dance between money and murder. Collecting debts was next. The first time they sent him to convince a local grocer to pay what he owed, Sam didn't threaten him with a gun. He picked up a crate of apples and slammed it into the man's counter so hard the fruit burst open like small, red explosions. "You pay by Friday," Sam said quietly. The grocer paid the next morning. Word spread. This was no ordinary teenager. This was a boy who didn't bluff. His rage, unpredictable, volcanic, became his most feared weapon. A single glare from Sam could silence a room. But it wasn't just rage that scared people. It was the way he hid it. The way he smiled seconds after making a threat. The way he wiped his hands on his trousers as though violence was simply a stain, an inconvenience. The men in the outfit started whispering. "He's different. He's not scared of anything. He'll do things most men won't." And they were right. The street had given Sam a childhood built on survival. The mob was shaping him into something far more dangerous. By 18, Sam had already developed a reputation, the kind that made people lower their voices when he walked by. His name had become a rumor, a warning, a presence. And then it happened, the moment Chicago would never forget. A small-time brawl turned into a killing. The details were messy, lost in witnesses' lies and the chaos of the moment, but the city awoke to newspapers screaming what the mob had long seen coming. 18-year-old gangster charged with murder. It was his first official crime. The first time the law tried to put chains on him. The first time people realized the quiet boy who used to run errands was no longer a kid. He was something else entirely. In court, Sam didn't break down or show fear. He sat there with the calmness of a priest listening to confession. No trembling lips. No tears. No plea for mercy. People in the gallery whispered, "Look at him, he's not scared at all." He's enjoying this. That boy's gonna be trouble. He escaped conviction. Witnesses conveniently forgot things. Evidence vanished. The usual magic that happened whenever the mob wanted a case to disappear. But something had changed. The city looked at Sam Giancana differently now. No longer as a reckless kid with a bad temper, but as a predator in the making. Even the older, seasoned gangsters who had survived Prohibition looked at him with a mixture of admiration and unease. There was something in his eyes, something sharp, glittering, untamed, that made it clear he wasn't just learning the business.
He was born for it.
Chicago had raised many gangsters. But Sam was something rare, a combination of raw intelligence, uncontrollable fury, and fearless ambition. His childhood had been carved from hardship. His teenage years sculpted by blood and crime. And now, at 18, he stood at the crossroads between boyhood and infamy, and everyone who crossed his path sensed the storm he was carrying inside him. He wasn't just a boy who ran errands for killers. He had become a killer in training. A young man who learned that life was cheap, loyalty was currency, and fear was the quickest path to power. Chicago had tried to tame him. The law had tried to stop him. But nothing, not even a murder charge, could slow the momentum of the boy destined to become one of the most dangerous mafia bosses in American history. This was only the beginning. The city just didn't know it yet. Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, share, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now back to the story. Power rarely arrives with a trumpet blast. Sometimes it enters quietly, like a whisper slipping into a room unnoticed. For Sam Giancana, power came not with a single act, but with 1,000 small moves, silent, precise, unstoppable. By the time Chicago realized what he had become, it was already too late. In his early 20s, Sam didn't just work for the Chicago outfit, he powered it. He understood something most mobsters never mastered. Fear could control a man's actions, but money could control his soul. Chicago was built on corruption. Politicians were puppets, unions were battlegrounds, and the gambling scene was a gold mine waiting for the right hands. And Sam's hands, steady, elegant, deceptively calm, were perfect. He started with the unions. The electricians' union became his playground. He didn't take it by force, not at first. He bribed, charmed, threatened, whispered, and pulled strings one by one until the entire union moved to his rhythm. Soon, every slot machine in Chicago needed Sam's nod before it could ring with music and money. With unions in his pocket, his eyes shifted to the gambling world, the glittering heart of Chicago's underground wealth. For years, the city had been controlled by black gambling bosses, smart, resourceful men who had built thriving underground empires of their own. They were respected,
Feared.
untouchable, until Sam arrived. He didn't just challenge them. He erased them. Threats came first, then sabotage. Then bodies began to fall in alleys, disappear in rivers, or flee the city under cover of darkness. One by one, the kings vanished, not all dead, but all defeated. Chicago's gambling world no longer had room for rivals. It belonged to one man. And people began whispering his name with a combination of awe and dread. Mooney's taking over everything. He's different. He's not just playing the game, he's rewriting it. Power gives birth to opportunity, and Sam grabbed opportunities the way a starving man grabs food. He wasn't content with Chicago. He wanted international. He wanted limitless. And so came the casinos. Vegas,
Cuba.
the Caribbean,
Guatemala.
His reach expanded like wildfire. Every night, tables filled with gamblers, politicians, celebrities, businessmen, soldiers, losing fortunes under dazzling lights. And every morning, money was wired to Sam's empire like an endless tide. Some weeks, the outfit counted so much cash that the money counter's fingers bled. Under Sam's watchful eye, millions flowed through underground tunnels of corruption. The casinos weren't just businesses. They were machines printing money, powered by desperation, greed, and Sam's absolute refusal to fail. He wasn't just rich. He was untouchable. And the more money he made, the more people worshipped him. By 1957, everyone in the underworld knew the truth. Chicago belonged to one man. Sam wasn't just a mafia boss. He was the maestro of crime, orchestrating movements, commanding territories, and controlling fortunes with a flick of his hand. Yet he never sought public office. He never gave speeches. He never appeared in newspapers unless forced. And still, his influence seeped into every corner of the country. Judges called in favors. Police captains drank from glasses Sam bought. Union leaders whispered his name with trembling reverence. And the streets, those living veins of Chicago, gave him a title that captured exactly what he had become. The Invisible King of America. Not elected, not crowned, but absolutely obeyed. His power was eerie, almost mythical. People said he could topple a business with a single phone call, end a life with a nod, or save a man with a whisper. Mothers told their sons not to cross him. Bartenders poured drinks for him with quiet hands. He was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Most mafia bosses preferred the shadows. Not Sam. If he was the phantom king behind Chicago's wealth, he was also the flamboyant monarch of its nightlife. He didn't simply live well, he lived loud. Expensive suits in colors that made other men squint. Silk shirts that glowed under club lights. Diamonds on his ring fingers that caught attention before he even spoke. And then there were the women. Not just local girls. He dated pageant winners, actresses, starlets. Women whose beauty commanded attention. Women who walked beside him like trophies made of flesh and glitter. His most famous companion, though, was the dazzling Phyllis McGuire, the angel-faced singer whose voice could silence a nightclub. And when Sam walked into her shows, surrounded by bodyguards, the room leaned toward him like metal drawn to a magnet. But nothing announced his rise more loudly than his friendship with Frank Sinatra. Wherever Sinatra went, Sam wasn't far behind. Backstage, in private lounges, at casino tables, during after-hours parties that spilled into dawn. It was the perfect storm, a gangster who acted like a celebrity who acted like royalty, and a city that bowed to them both. Sam didn't hide his wealth. He wore it like a weapon. And the more he shined, the darker his enemies grew. Despite the laughter, the parties, the music, and the glamour, there was something chilling about Sam's public life. No one in the clubs forgot that he had sent men fleeing the city. No one on the casino floors forgot that he once drove hit squads with calm precision. No one in Chicago forgot how he rose from a teenage errand boy to a man who controlled entire industries. People cheered him because he was magnetic, but they also respected him because he was deadly. And deep down, everyone knew this was a king whose throne was built on bones. Sam enjoyed the spotlight, but behind his smile, behind the cigars and music and glittering lights, a shadow followed him everywhere. The shadow of ambition. The shadow of secrets. The shadow of enemies waiting in silence. His empire was growing. His money was multiplying. His influence reached from Chicago to Cuba, from Vegas to Washington. But with every new success, new dangers stirred in the dark. Power attracts jealousy. Power attracts enemies. Power attracts the government. And Sam Giancana, the invisible king who refused to hide, was about to learn that the higher a man rises, the more people aim for his fall. This was the height of his reign, and the beginning of his undoing. There are alliances born from trust, others from opportunity, and then there are alliances forged in the darkest corners of desperation, alliances so explosive they hum like live wires, one spark away from destroying everything around them. This is where Sam Giancana stepped out of the underworld and into the bloodstream of American politics. Not as a voter, not as an observer, but as a power broker, the invisible hand behind democracy. It began quietly. Political operatives slipped into Chicago, hoping to secure support in heavily mob-influenced districts. These men needed favors, money, influence, all the things legitimate political families were afraid to ask for openly. But Sam? Sam didn't fear anything. He sat across from congressmen and judges with the same expression he used when speaking to gamblers or street enforcers: calm, confident, deadly in his composure. He understood what politicians wanted better than they did: votes, control, and the illusion of victory. And he could provide all three. Backrooms became his theaters. Whiskey-filled meetings turned into strategic sessions. Names were traded like currency. Soon enough, one powerful American family realized Sam's value: the Kennedys. The Kennedy dynasty had money. They had ambition. They had a rising star, John F. Kennedy, handsome, charming, and hungry for the presidency. But they also had a problem. The states that could decide the primaries, Wisconsin and West Virginia, weren't easily swayed by speeches or slogans. They needed boots on the ground, influence, muscle, someone who could make voters listen. And in those days, the Chicago outfit didn't just hold influence, they owned influence. So the Kennedys reached through a friendly bridge: Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was Sam's friend, companion, sidekick in the nightlife. And Sinatra was also close to the Kennedy family. One night, Sinatra delivered a message: "Jack needs your help." Sam smiled. Help a future president? Why not? It wasn't just politics. It was leverage. And leverage was his favorite weapon. What happened next was one of the most quietly orchestrated operations in American political history. Sam mobilized precinct captains, union bosses, neighborhood toughs, bar owners who knew exactly which song to play on their jukeboxes: Sinatra's High Hopes, the unofficial Kennedy anthem. Money flowed from Sam's pockets to political hands. Ballots were moved. Numbers were improved. Opposition softened or vanished entirely. And in the end, John F. Kennedy became the Democratic nominee. Some whispered it. Others swore by it. Sam Giancana helped elect a president. It wasn't proven, but it wasn't denied. And Sam? He loved every second of it. He had touched the throne of power. And he wasn't done yet. At the same time, a different kind of power was hunting for solutions. Fidel Castro had taken over Cuba.
Communist.
Unpredictable. Dangerous. And, worst of all, he threw the American Mafia out of Cuba, shutting down their golden casinos and seizing their assets. The mob had lost millions overnight. The CIA felt threatened. Both wanted Castro gone, permanently. The CIA's plan was bold, but they lacked something critical: assassins. People with no conscience. People who could kill and vanish. So, in an unimaginable twist of fate, a top-secret government agency approached the most feared mafia boss in America. This wasn't a movie. This was real. They met in hotel rooms. They exchanged coded messages. They spoke in careful, deadly whispers. The CIA wanted Castro dead. Sam offered his services, not out of loyalty, but revenge. He supplied ideas, solutions, contacts. When the CIA suggested a public shooting, Sam shook his head. Messy, he said. Too many witnesses. Too many questions. Then he leaned in, eyes glinting. Poison.
Clean. Quiet.
You'll never trace it. The CIA agreed. Sam helped procure poison capsules meant to slip into Castro's drinks or food. He arranged the handoff. He selected intermediaries. He taught intelligence agents the art of killing quietly. America's government had entered the underworld, and Sam Giancana stood at the crossroads. Few men in history have ever held influence across the Mafia, the CIA, the political dynasty of the Kennedys. But Sam did. He became a walking paradox, a criminal with government clearance, a gangster with political sway, a man whose name was spoken in both Senate chambers and smoke-filled basements. He was the hidden bridge between worlds that were never meant to touch. Late-night calls came from senators. Anonymous meetings from federal agents. Favor after favor, secret after secret. Sam moved between these realms effortlessly, a ghost binding together institutions that publicly despised each other. He funded elections. He rigged ballots. He delivered muscle where diplomacy failed. He supplied poison where strategy collapsed. And in return, he gained something priceless: protection, access,
Power.
Only a handful of men alive knew the true extent of this alliance. Even fewer understood how dangerous it truly was. With every meeting, every handshake, every whispered deal, Sam dug himself deeper into a pit where one misstep meant death, not just for him, but for the country's stability. This alliance wasn't just dangerous. It was catastrophic waiting to happen. The CIA had compromised itself. The Kennedys had made a devil's bargain. And Sam? Sam held the receipts. He knew which districts were manipulated. He knew which agents broke federal law. He knew who signed off on the Castro plots. He knew the conversations that never made it onto official paper. He knew everything. The Mafia, the government, the Kennedys, all wrapped together like a ticking bomb. A bomb with Sam Giancana at its center. A man holding enough secrets to burn Washington, Las Vegas, Chicago, and Langley to the ground. The alliance had given him power beyond imagination, but it had also written his death sentence in invisible ink. Because secrets this big never stay buried. They leak. They spread. They destroy. And soon, everyone involved would realize the same terrifying truth. The moment Sam Giancana learned the government's secrets, he became too dangerous to live. This was the chapter of alliances. The chapter of betrayals. The chapter where the game shifted from crime to geopolitics. The chapter where every handshake was treason, every favor was a bomb, and every day Sam lived was borrowed time. The alliance was in motion, and the fallout was coming. Every king has a weakness. Some fall to greed, some to arrogance. But the most dangerous weakness of all is love. Sam Giancana had survived bullets, betrayal, political storms, and the FBI's endless pursuit. He had stared down presidents, outmaneuvered federal agents, and risen higher than any gangster in American history. But none of that prepared him for Phyllis McGuire. She wasn't a mobster. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't a spy. She was a star, America's music darling, the face and voice of the famed McGuire sisters. Her beauty was soft, almost angelic. Her smile could calm a room. Her voice slipped into hearts like a silk ribbon. And Sam, the man who had killed without blinking, fell for her with the helplessness of a boy. Their worlds should never have collided, a glamorous singer adored by millions and a gangster feared by thousands. But Sam was relentless. When he wanted something, he took it, and Phyllis was no exception. He showered her with gifts, diamonds that glowed like frozen fire, furs softer than breath, cars delivered in the night like secret promises. He sat front row at her shows, his dark eyes locked on her as if she were the only person in the world. And strangely, she loved him back. Or at least something in her did. The part drawn to danger, to intensity, to a man who treated her like the center of the universe. Their romance became a scandal whispered from coast to coast. How could America's sweetheart love a man like Sam? To the public, it was shocking. To the government, it was gold. Because for the first time ever, Sam Giancana had a vulnerability, and the FBI would use it like a knife. While Sam and Phyllis were traveling the country, performing, dancing, sneaking into suites at midnight, the FBI watched with growing interest. They didn't care about the romance. They cared about the leverage. They had tried wiretaps before, but Sam was too careful. They had followed him before, but he moved like a ghost. But love makes a man slow down. Love makes him careless. Love makes him human. And humans can be trapped. So the FBI turned all its resources, all its fury, onto Sam's private life. They began with the hotels. Rooms rented in Phyllis's name. Suites booked under aliases. Penthouse floors emptied for privacy. Agents slipped in disguised as cleaners, electricians, bellboys. They unscrewed vents, planted microphones behind headboards, tucked recorders beneath carpets. Every whisper became evidence. Every laugh became a clue. Every sigh became a data point. Sam, who controlled entire cities, had no idea that the government now controlled his bedroom. The surveillance escalated into something almost obsessive. Everywhere Sam went, the FBI followed, not from a distance, but from centimeters away. They wiretapped her rooms. They wiretapped his rooms. They wiretapped their calls. They wiretapped their silences. But wiretaps weren't enough. Agents began physical shadowing, a method designed not to gather information, but to make him snap. They followed Sam onto golf courses. Every hole, every swing, every curse. If he took a step, they took a step. If he paused, they paused. One agent stood so close during a golf game that Sam, mid-swing, froze and glared. "Back up," he hissed. The agent didn't move. Sam's face went red. He swung anyway, and the ball sailed into the trees. The agents didn't laugh. They didn't mock him. They just watched. Always watching. The harassment grew surreal. If Sam went to a restaurant, an agent followed him to the restroom and stood at the urinal beside him. Sam would clench his jaw, unable to relieve himself under surveillance, and the agent would simply stare ahead, silent. If Sam lit a cigar, the agents recorded the click of the lighter. If he whispered to Phyllis, they amplified the audio. If he slept, they captured his breathing pattern. No gangster in history had ever been watched like this, not even Capone. It wasn't surveillance anymore. It was psychological warfare. Phyllis tried to comfort him. "Sam, ignore them," she whispered. But how do you ignore someone standing inches from your life? The stress began carving lines into Sam's face. He was used to being the predator, not the prey. For the first time in decades, he felt trapped. And the FBI saw it. They wanted him paranoid. They wanted him agitated. They wanted him unstable, a man who might lash out, slip up, confess something, make a mistake. And Sam was unraveling. He began yelling at empty corners, convinced agents were listening. He snapped at waiters who moved too quietly. He accused shadows of spying. He started sleeping with a gun under his pillow again, not for enemies, but for fear of being ambushed by the government. He even began questioning Phyllis. "Did you tell them? Did you let them in? Did you talk?"
She cried. She begged.
She denied. But love couldn't soothe him anymore. The man who had once stared down bullets was now being broken by whispers. Sam tried to hold on to power, hosting parties, dressing sharp, flashing that trademark grin. But the cracks were visible to everyone around him. The lieutenants,
The bodyguards, even the men who idolized him.
The FBI's assault on his sanity worked. His temper became unpredictable. His decision-making faltered. He grew reckless, distracted, emotional, things no mafia boss could afford to be. And for the first time in his life, the outfit began to doubt him. Love had exposed what bullets never could. A weakness. A blind spot. A door the government walked right through. Sam Giancana, the invisible king, the phantom ruler, the man who moved presidents and toppled dictators, was now being undone by the one thing he could never kill. Feeling. Phyllis had become his heaven, and the FBI had turned her into his hell. This was no longer a war between gangs and lawmen. It was a war between a man's heart and his enemy's patience. And slowly, painfully, Sam was losing. War has many battlefields, streets, courts, deserts, oceans. But the war between Sam Giancana and Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy? That battlefield was America itself. And Kennedy wasn't looking for a stalemate. He wanted annihilation. When JFK became president, the country celebrated hope, energy, and a new era. But behind every handshake and camera flash, a cold promise simmered. Robert Kennedy was coming for the Mafia. He had waited years for this moment, years of watching gangsters slip through cracks, years of hearing Sam Giancana mock the law, years of studying the outfit like a hunter stalking prey. Now, with the full authority of the Justice Department behind him, Robert Kennedy unleashed everything. Every agent, every resource, every surveillance strategy, every grudge. Sam Giancana wasn't just on the list.
He was the list.
Target number one. The man the Attorney General vowed to break. The FBI had already been harassing Sam through wiretaps and physical surveillance, but Kennedy's war transformed harassment into suffocation. Agents didn't follow Sam from a distance. They stuck to him like shadows glued to skin. Where he walked, they walked. If he turned left, they turned left. If he stepped into a restaurant, they entered behind him, filling booths, pretending to read menus they never touched. Sam's world shrank to a cage of eyes and ears. On the street, in clubs, at Phyllis's apartment, on golf courses, even in restrooms, where agents lined up beside him with chilling silence. It wasn't about gathering evidence anymore. It was psychological warfare, a slow, deliberate crushing. And Sam, who had long built his reputation on fearlessness, felt something tightening in his chest he hadn't felt since boyhood. Pressure. Real pressure. Years of intimidation had yielded nothing useful. Sam was too smart, too seasoned, too silent. But Kennedy wasn't trying to catch him with evidence. He was trying to trap him with law. Behind closed doors, a small team of prosecutors and federal strategists devised a plan that was more brilliant and more vicious than anything the Mafia had ever faced. Strip Sam of the Fifth Amendment, then force him to speak. It was legal. It was ingenious. It was deadly. One morning, Sam received a subpoena ordering him to testify before a federal grand jury. He smirked, thinking he'd do what mobsters always do.
Take the fifth.
Stay silent. Walk away. But the prosecutor had other plans. They handed Sam a document, thin, unassuming, deadly as a razor. Immunity. It didn't free him. It chained him. Because with immunity, nothing Sam said could be used against him in a criminal case. Which meant he could no longer legally refuse to answer questions. No more Fifth Amendment. No more protection. No more excuse to stay silent. The judge made it clear. Mr. Giancana, you are hereby ordered to testify. You are immune from prosecution. You no longer have the right to decline. Sam felt the blood drain from his face. Not even bullets had ever rattled him like those words. If he talked, he violated the Mafia's code. And the Mafia's punishment was death, swift and merciless. If he refused, he violated federal law. And the government's punishment was prison, cold and unyielding. For the first time in his career, Sam was cornered with no way out. Stay silent and rot. Asterisk, asterisk. He sat in the courtroom, surrounded by federal power, sweat forming on the back of his neck. The prosecutor asked the first question. Mr. Giancana, can you describe your role? Sam cut him off. I decline to answer. The judge slammed his gavel. You cannot decline. You are immune. Sam's jaw tightened, his voice colder. I decline to answer. The prosecutor leaned forward. If you don't answer, you'll be held in contempt of court. Sam didn't blink. I decline. 3 words. Repeated like a drumbeat. Defiant.
Doomed.
Finally, the judge had enough. Mr. Giancana, you are in contempt. You will be remanded to federal custody. Sam Giancana, Chicago's invisible king, was handcuffed like a common thief. And the world gasped. Prison was never part of Sam's mythology. He was supposed to be untouchable, uncatchable, unbreakable. But now, he sat behind steel bars, the fluorescent lights above him buzzing like insects. No silk suits. No starlets. No Sinatra. No power. Just concrete, metal, and silence. He paced his cell like a caged animal, fury twisting inside him. The government had done what no rival gangster ever could. They humiliated him. Rumors spread fast. Faster than bullets. Mooney's locked up. He didn't talk, but he still got caught. Maybe the FBI is stronger than the outfit. Maybe Sam ain't invincible anymore. Fear turned into whispers. Whispers into doubts. Doubts into resentment. And the men in the outfit, the very men Sam once ruled, began to question their king. When Sam was released a year later, he expected the outfit to welcome him back as a martyr, a man who had endured prison rather than betray them. But the mob did not see a hero. They saw something else. Weakness. Risk. Exposure. The rules were brutal. A boss who attracts too much heat becomes a liability. A liability becomes a threat. And threats are not tolerated. Sam had gone from the Mafia's greatest weapon to their greatest danger. And danger is something the outfit always removes. Quietly.
Cleanly. Permanently.
Sam stepped back into Chicago expecting to reclaim his throne. But the throne had been taken. The respect had faded. The fear had evaporated. He wasn't untouchable anymore. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't even influential. To the government, he was a criminal who could be forced into a corner. To the Mafia, he was a crack in the foundation, a man who had shown the world a mob boss could be caught. And Chicago's underworld had one final judgment for men like that. A judgment Sam would soon face. Because the noose wasn't just tightened. It was ready to pull. For a man who once ruled Chicago's underworld like a phantom monarch, exile felt like death. Not a bloody, violent death, but a slow, suffocating one. Yet when a Chicago outfit cast Sam Giancana out, they believed they had solved their problem. They thought distance would bury danger. They underestimated the man they had created. Because Sam didn't go quietly. He went global. Cut off from Chicago, Sam fled to Mexico, a place where money talked louder than law. He arrived not as a fugitive, but as a businessman with pockets deep enough to command respect. At first, the banishment stung. Chicago was his territory, his stage, his empire. But Sam was not a man who stayed down long. He reinvented himself. He sought alliances with Caribbean casino operators, Guatemalan businessmen, and foreign political elites who valued his ability to make rivers of money appear from dust. With a cunning smile and a suitcase full of cash, he secured control of casino routes, floating gambling ships, and offshore operations that ran beneath governments and above suspicion. Unlike Chicago's cold streets and smoky clubs, overseas operations were warm, bright, luxurious, places where politicians gambled with secrets and tycoons gambled with fortunes. Sam became the quiet architect behind the scenes. Just as he'd once been in the U.S., money flowed. Ships sailed. Casino lights glittered like fireflies on dark water.
He was exiled, yes.
But forgotten? Never. In Mexico, Sam lived like a retired emperor. Fresh seafood at dusk. Women who adored the mystery he carried. Politicians who sought his blessing. Wealth that dripped like honey into offshore accounts. He ate well, dressed well, and spoke to the locals with a mix of charm and menace that kept him both loved and feared. His enemies back home might have thought they buried him with that banishment.
But Sam?
He considered exile a vacation. Yet beneath the ocean breeze and the Caribbean sun, something darker lingered, a shadow at the edges of his success. Because Sam carried secrets. Not rumors. Not stories. But secrets that could reshape American history. Secrets involving the CIA. Secrets involving Cuba. Secrets involving the Kennedys. Secrets that were never meant to surface. For years, the Castro assassination plots had been whispered about, dismissed as conspiracy theories, buried behind classified documents, and hidden within layers of national security. But secrets have a way of rising, especially when the stakes are high. In 1975, Congress formed a special Senate committee to investigate illegal CIA operations. Among the darkest topics on their list? CIA involvement with the Mafia in attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro. Names were collected. Files were opened. Documents were unsealed. And on every page, one name appeared like a stain. Sam Giancana. The U.S. government now wanted answers. Real answers. And they didn't care that Sam was living in exile. They didn't care that he'd been banished. They wanted him on American soil in a room under oath. So they issued a subpoena, a legal summons powerful enough to drag Sam across borders and out of hiding. When Mexican authorities arrested Sam, they claimed it was for a visa violation. But Sam knew better. He could smell the truth behind the lie. The CIA wanted him quiet. The Senate wanted him questioned. And the outfit, his own people, wanted him gone. He was surrounded by wolves. Some wore badges. Some wore suits. Some once called him brother. For the first time in years, dread slid into Sam's chest like a cold knife. He was escorted to the border, a man no longer welcome anywhere. Reporters swarmed him. Cameras flashed. Microphones pointed at his face. Mr. Giancana, why were you deported? What will you tell the Senate? Are you afraid? Sam gave nothing. But behind his dark glasses, his eyes burned with the realization. His past had finally caught up to him. Back in Chicago, the city he once ruled felt different. Colder, darker, smaller. But Sam refused to show fear. He stepped off the plane like a king returning from a victorious campaign. He told reporters, "I'm back in charge." It was bravado, of course. But Sam believed in the power of words. A king only remains a king if people believe he still wears the crown. Yet the outfit wasn't impressed. They didn't welcome him home. They didn't send representatives to greet him. No dinners. No meetings. No cars waiting outside the airport. Silence. A silence louder than gunfire. The younger generation of mob leaders, men who grew powerful while Sam was gone, saw him not as a returning legend, but as a threat. A threat carrying political baggage, government attention, CIA connections, and dangerous secrets that could burn them all. To them, Sam was a liability. A man too unpredictable, too proud, too exposed. A man who might talk. And the Mafia had a simple rule for men like that. Eliminate the risk. As Sam prepared for his Senate testimony, his phone stopped ringing. Old allies stopped visiting. Friends avoided his door. He still spoke arrogantly about reclaiming power. Still strutted through Chicago as if he owned it. But there was something hollow behind it. Something fragile. A dread he could not shake. Because Sam could feel it. In the cold stares, in the whispers behind his back, in the absence of men who once followed him. The outfit had judged him. And their verdict was final. The Senate wanted him to talk. The CIA wanted him silent. The Mafia wanted him erased. Sam was no longer standing on an empire. He was standing on a trapdoor. And beneath him waited the darkest, deepest fall of his life. Sam believed he could walk into a city that no longer trusted him and reclaim a throne that no longer existed. He believed charisma could save him. He believed money could protect him. He believed the outfit feared him like before. He believed he still mattered. That was his mistake. His final mistake. Because the men he once commanded had already made their decision. And they weren't planning to let him testify. Not before the Senate. Not before the cameras. Not before the world. Sam Giancana thought he was returning home. But really? He was walking straight into the jaws of death. June 19, 1975. The night settled over Oak Park like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Quiet, ordinary, deceptively calm. Inside a modest brick home on Winona Avenue, the most dangerous man in American organized crime prepared a simple meal in the dim glow of his basement kitchen. Sausage and peppers. A dish he could no longer eat. Doctor's orders. Stomach trouble. Age catching up. The end already creeping toward him in ways he didn't yet see. So, why was he cooking it? Because it wasn't for him. It was for someone else. Someone who was supposed to be a friend. Someone he trusted enough to feed. Someone the outfit had chosen for a job dirtier and deadlier than all the bloodshed that came before. In the cramped kitchen, Sam Giancana, once the invisible king of Chicago, the man who had outsmarted presidents and silenced enemies, wiped his hands on a towel, stirred the pan, and hummed quietly to himself. Maybe he felt the shift in the air. Maybe he sensed the ghosts gathering in the corners. Maybe he didn't. But the man who had lived his entire life anticipating danger had let his guard down for the final time. Down the narrow stairs, footsteps approached. Slow. Measured. Certain. Sam didn't turn around. Why would he? This was someone he expected. Someone he'd known for years. Someone who'd shared drinks, secrets, and dangers with him. Food's almost ready, Sam muttered, still facing the stove, spatula in hand. The footsteps stopped just a few feet behind him. Silence. Then, bang. A bullet tore through the back of his head, snapping it forward, sending him crashing onto the basement floor. The pan clattered, sizzling peppers spilling like embers across the tiles. There was no struggle. No last words. No chance to beg, bargain, or fight. A lifetime of terror, alliances, murders, betrayals, and secrets ended in less than 2 seconds. But the killer wasn't finished. He lifted the gun again, aimed carefully, and fired a second bullet straight into Sam's mouth. Through the lips that had stayed silent. Through the voice that had refused to testify. Through the mouth that carried secrets the world was never meant to hear. The Mafia has a language older than law, older than loyalty, older than fear itself. A shot to the head is execution. A shot through the mouth? That is a warning. A ritual. A symbol so clear every mobster understands it instinctively. Do not speak.
Do not betray.
Do not testify. Do not confess. Do not reveal what you know. Even in death, the code must be honored. And Sam, even in his final moment, became the ultimate example. The police who arrived later found a scene that felt less like a murder and more like the end of a legend. Sam Giancana, the man who rose from street kid to mafia boss, who drove hit squads at 16, who controlled unions, casinos, and governments, who whispered into the ears of senators, who helped the Kennedys win states, who conspired with the CIA to assassinate Castro, who funded elections, rigged ballots, and manipulated industries. Lay dead on his kitchen floor, surrounded by half-cooked food and silence. He had touched presidents, toppled gambling empires, altered American politics, built fortunes, buried enemies, loved a superstar, cheated the law, outplayed the FBI, and terrified every man who ever crossed him. But in the end, he couldn't escape the one enemy he never truly understood: his own past. Every secret he kept had a price, and someone finally came to collect. When the newspapers released the story the next day, the headlines exploded across the nation. Mafia boss Giancana assassinated. Gangland-style killing in Chicago. Shot in the mouth, mob sends chilling message. Politicians pretended to be shocked. The CIA stayed silent. The FBI refused to comment. The outfit denied involvement with an innocence too practiced to be believed. But behind closed doors, everyone knew. Sam's knowledge could have destroyed them all. He knew which politicians took money, which elections were manipulated, which CIA agents coordinated with mob hitmen, which secrets were buried in Havana, which phone calls passed between Washington and Chicago, which murders were paid for by people in suits, not street corners. His testimony before the U.S. Senate could have ignited the biggest scandal in American history. He didn't live long enough to speak a single word. His death silenced more than a man. It silenced a chapter of America. And those secrets? They didn't die with him. They remain buried. In files, in memories, in rumors whispered in smoky bars and darkened offices. Waiting. Watching. Threatening to resurface. Some say Sam's killing was a mafia hit. Some say it was the CIA eliminating a liability. Some say it was both. Two enemies converging with one goal: erase the man who knew too much. Others whisper that Sam expected the end, that he cooked that meal knowing it was his last act, that he welcomed the killer to make a final point. No one knows the truth. And that is what makes this story so hypnotic, so tragic, so terrifying. The truth is still alive, just buried, waiting for someone brave enough to dig. Now that you've seen how the most dangerous mafia boss in American history was erased in silence, do you believe his secrets were buried forever? Or do you think someone, somewhere, is still protecting the truth? Thank you for watching the story to the end. Please click subscribe, like, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one.